Excellent. I see that we have now got a quorum. So if we could possibly have the housekeeping slide, please. Just as an introduction, firstly, a very warm welcome on behalf of Jamf and CIONET to this event. We're delighted to have you with us, and particularly delighted to have the CEO of Jamf. This is really a first for us in Europe, because normally CEOs don't fly across the Atlantic for our events. But now, of course, in the virtual world, we can do all these good things. So very excited really to have Dean with us. I think he'll give us a very enlivened view of the world. But just to set the scene, if you could please just name yourself with your first, your full name actually, and company, if you can, please. If you click right, you should see the rename command, and you can just put your name down as I have put my own name down. In the plenary session, which we will start with, if you can mute yourselves so there's no background noise. Dean will be talking to us, but as soon as he's finished, we're really keen to have some questions for Dean. So please prepare some questions. You'll note that there is a chat room. Welcome to put those into the chat room, or to actually talk to us about them. Again, if you have questions during Q&A, please put your hand up, certainly in the plenary session. What we'll actually do, hopefully, is to have the plenary and then split you up to sessions where you will have an opportunity to really dig in and ask much more searching questions, hopefully. So we've got a really good, well-qualified team standing by from Jamf to listen to your questions in the breakout rooms and to respond to them. And again, if you're not familiar with this Zoom format, at the top right, you'll see a ability to switch between the speaker view and the full view, so that you can see exactly who is on the screen. But firstly, what I'd like to do is just to have a very quick round of the delegates who've just joined us. If you could just give us your name, your organization, and just one comment about the challenges and the opportunities that you see. So perhaps you can start with Mahesh. If you could just introduce yourself, please. And unmute as well, if you could, please. Mahesh. Yes, go ahead, Mahesh, please.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Dean. I'm from India. This is Mahesh. I'm working in Brilliant as an integrator, and I'm the integrator in India, Java integrator in India.
Excellent.
Good. Peter Bradbury, if you could introduce yourself, please. And unmute, please.
Good spot. Hi, Pete Bradbury here, Program Manager at Friendly Trust. Just looking to see how bring your own device approach and framework can work on this particular occasion in this session. So thank you.
Excellent. Hugo, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
So my name is Hugo Mathias. I'm the CIO of Northampton General. We are looking at devices in Central, so I'm just kind of curious as to what's going on.
Excellent. Richard Stewart, over to you, Maestro. If you could just.
Hi, Roger. How are you? Good to see you.
Good.
Yeah, Richard Stewart, until recently CIO of Harvey Nichols on the interim basis. I'm interested in this subject because we were seeing a rise in demand for Apple devices, and the policy always felt a bit awkward, and we didn't really quite nail who should have them and who shouldn't, and why. So I'm looking for a bit of clarity on this, I think.
Thank you, Richard. Keith Baxter, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Keith Baxter. I'm the CIO of the Anthony Nicholas Group. We're a multi-brand retailer across Ireland and the UK. We have Apple devices and Androids deployed across all our properties, stores, wholesale, manufacturing. And we are just in the process of coming up to renewal of our MDM, and I'm just curious to see what's out there, what people are using. There's a number of applications available for managing the devices, and I'm just curious to see what people are using, and I'd be interested to see what the licensing is and what the costs are as well associated with it, because a lot of them look the same, especially since some of them have changed the ownership, etc.
Fine, excellent. I'm sure, unfortunately, as these things take some time for all of us to join, there will be a couple of late arrivals. I think it's really appropriate, Dean, as we've got you all to ourselves right now. Please give us your perspective on how you see the world and what are the opportunities.
Yeah, my goodness. Yes, thank you, Roger, and thanks everybody who's joining. I'll make some commentary just to give you a little bit of background. I will say, you know, as we're all looking to the future, it is almost an impossible thing to predict right now. For those of us that led through 9/11, you know that was a major life disruption for so many. There was an economic downturn, but that turned around relatively quickly. It was a major impact from a life perspective. Those who led through the financial collapse of 2008, that was a major, major economic downturn. And what we're experiencing now is both together. Something that impacts our lives huge, and something that's impacting the economy. And the greatest struggle right now is trying to figure out what's going to happen next. But before I get to that, why don't I actually step back and just give you a little bit of information on me, only because if you're going to listen to my worldview on things, maybe you want to know what shaped that worldview over the years. So I'm going to give you the bio of my life in 6 key dates that affect today's conversation. The first date is 1983. I was 16 years old and was going to become a truck driver like my father, and was in a family where no one had ever gone to university in the history of my family. And one day an Apple IIe computer was pushed into the classroom, and I taught myself how to program and decided to go to uni as a computer science degree, and my life was forever changed. So I actually have a little bit of indebtedness to Apple for changing the trajectory of my life. So it's pretty important to know that about me in the backdrop. In 1989, complete switch. I started my career as an operating systems programmer for IBM. That was Apple's enemy. So all of a sudden, IBM and the PC compatible and Microsoft became my friend, and Apple became essentially my enemy at the time. In 1995, while still with IBM, I was pursuing a graduate degree, and I wrote this thesis paper. Actually, I had to find this in my house in order to tell this story and dust it off. It's a 1995 thesis paper called Telecommuting, and it was specifically to encourage businesses and business leaders to embrace remote working employees out of their homes. And keep in mind that I wrote this based on the fact that we, at the time, had 2,400 baud modems, analog modems, that wrote text a line of time on your screen. And I apparently thought that was fast enough connectivity to say we should be able to work anywhere we want. So I've been dabbling in this remote work topic now for the last 25 years. But I had never telecommuted myself until 2007, where the employer I was with at the time actually assigned me to a location just outside of London, where we did not have an office. So I worked out of my home out in Ascot for a year. So I still have plenty of good friends there, and have the UK as a special place to me and my family. 2015, I joined Jamf. That's the company I'm with now, an organization whose mission is to help other organizations succeed with Apple. And coincidentally, the week I started, my old employer, IBM, maker of the IBM PC, decided to let IBMers use Mac for the first time, Apple Mac for the first time. Today, 5 years later, over 150,000 IBMers walk around with a Mac computer as their primary computing device. If there's one story that tells of the Apple transformation within business, I think that's it. And I am in the very strange position of having been on both sides of that journey with IBM. And then the final date I give you is March 12th of 2020. That was just 2 months and 2 days ago, where I sent a message at 7 o'clock at night out to all 1,300 Jamf employees around the world, telling them, don't come into work the next day. It was during the evening. Actually, you all were sleeping. It was 7 o'clock in the evening US time. And I sent everybody a message saying, don't come to work in the morning. We're going to start working from our home. So we made the trend, and nobody came in the next day. We made our transition in a 12-hour period without disruption to our products and services that we provide, working entirely out of our homes. I haven't stepped foot in a Jamf office now in over 2 months, and we've been able to keep things moving actually quite well. So all of these 6 events have really shaped the way that I look at working remotely. I never dreamed in a million years this thesis paper that I wrote 25 years ago would one day become a necessity, and that's exactly what we're in right now. The organization I'm with, I'm not here to talk about Jamf all that much, but just to let you know, we were founded in 2002, one of Apple's worst years in their history. It was a pre-iPad, pre-iPhone, and before the iPod took off. We formed an organization to help organizations succeed with Apple, and few, if any, within a business environment were using Apple. But boy, has that changed over the years. Not only have we helped ourselves go remote, but we've helped thousands of other organizations. In total, Jamf has over 38,000 customers in over 100 countries, deploying over 16 million Apple Mac, iPads, iPhones, and Apple TVs. And I say that only because since all we do is Apple within organizations, Jamf's size and growth alone ought to tell you what has been happening. I'm not surprised to hear you say that you're getting more requests for Apple within your organizations, because we've become the fastest growing device management company, and now one of the largest, probably the largest standalone management company, and all we do is Apple. See, today in many companies, UK included, the most common operating system for accessing the internet is actually no longer Microsoft. It's no longer Windows. It is Apple operating systems. In fact, according to StatCounter data, and you can all do your own research, it's a website called StatCounter. They measure web traffic by country back to each operating system. 43% of the web traffic in the UK comes from an Apple operating system versus 28% for Windows and 26% for Android. iPhone is the leading mobile device in business. iPad is the dominant tablet in business. And Mac has grown from, you all remember it, 10 years ago, maybe 1 to 2% share of the units sold compared to Windows. Whereas today it's over 10% in countries like the US and the UK. So it's gotten through those years of just being a marketing machine, and it's now considered a business machine. And those have been the toughest years of growth. And now that it's been embraced, I see it taking off further. In fact, if I go back to that StatCounter data and I take out all the mobile devices and I just look at Windows versus Mac, 10 years ago, about 93% of web traffic was from Windows and 6% was from Mac. In the most recent month, 66% is from Windows, 30% is Mac. In 10 years, it's gone from 10-to-1 Windows Mac to 2-to-1 Windows Mac, and it's continuing to converge. So the question is, as you look at your organizations, is why? You know, why has Apple taken off like this, both in the consumer and business markets? Because if you want one prediction for the future, I was predicting that it was going to go in that direction before this pandemic broke out based on data. I think the pandemic's going to accelerate it, and I'll explain why. Most important, I'll give you 5 quick reasons for Apple's growth. One is it's the user's choice. If businesses allow people to choose, Apple's going to be chosen more often. That is doubly true because of the demographic changes. The demographic changes of people entering the workforce in the last 5 years and the next 5 years, Apple is far and away the #1 technology brand out for those employees. The third reason why Apple is growing is I refer to the halo effect of the Apple ecosystem. It's really interesting, but Apple's got more devices to be used in an enterprise than any other provider. Windows doesn't offer a mobile device anymore. Microsoft doesn't offer a mobile device. So the only company that is out there offering phones, tablets, and computers, and let's go a step further, even conference room displays with Apple TVs, there's only one company that has that entire ecosystem. So what happens is Apple grows as people choose one element of the ecosystem, because the Apple ecosystem works so well together. So they'll start with a phone, and then they decide to go with an iPad, or they go with a Mac. So it grows from there. So the user choice, the demographics, and the ecosystem. And my last 2 reasons for the Apple growth that I see are actually more organizationally specific. From a business perspective, Apple offers advantages like built-in security, like Gatekeeper and XProtect, solutions built into the operating system that are attractive to organizations. Apple was also the first company, and now Microsoft has done it and Google has done it as well. But Apple was the first company to do something called zero-touch deployments, where you would not ever have to touch the device that goes to the employee. Apple was the first to have done it, and now, of course, working with Jamf, they do it more seamlessly than anybody else. Now, why do they do that? Because they're the maker of the hardware and the operating system, so that they can control when you turn on right out of the shrink wrap box, you turn on an Apple device for the first time, every Apple device, it pings the Apple Cloud as soon as it connects. And if the Apple Cloud discovers, oh, you're an organizationally owned device, in our case, it will kick it over to the Jamf server, and we will find out who you are, and we'll automatically set up that device. The result is that IT teams can just send shrink wrap Apple devices out to the homes of employees and have them automatically set up upon and secure themselves upon first power up. Because of this and other zero-touch technologies, there have been many total cost of ownership studies that have said, wait a second, we think it actually may be less expensive to own Apple than other devices. IBM validated that. There's a Forrester total economic study that was done on that as well that says the total cost of support on these, because we never have to touch them, is actually less expensive. And we have seen Apple, as a result, grow in business substantially. And then the 5th reason I'll give you for Apple's growth, I'm sorry, we got a question in there. Keith, did you want to ask a question?
I'm so terribly sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
But you've hit exactly my predicament right on the head. And you'll forgive me once again, I hope, because I'm not terribly familiar with Jamf. But I've gone through the transition from AirWatch 1 into Workspace 1 on the deployment. So, and we've had the predicament of, we've actually given the choice of either Android, Samsung, or iOS, iPhone, iPad. And we've had a mixed result. On company-specific process-driven devices, we've gone with iPads or iPhones, and then for user personal devices for themselves, we've given them the choice. So I have a mixed bag, and so I'm on Workspace 1 now. VMware bought AirWatch, so I have the ability to half manage Androids, but fully manage iOS. But if I look at something like Cisco or sorry, Meraki MDM, they don't care what the device is, and I have zero touch deployment. So I'm in this predicament of where to go, because I want to keep that control. I want that zero touch. You've absolutely nailed where Apple is perceived to be more expensive, but in the long term, the Samsung has become a higher price point, but you do get that sort of quality of service from the manufacturer by paying that little bit more for the Android. But I want that continuity across both devices.
Yeah, I hear you. Thank you for your question. And the one thing I don't want to do is, I don't want this to turn into a Jamf sales pitch. So I'm going to resist the temptation to do that, but I will address something technically since I was speaking to it. What you'll find, and a lot of people want to look, so I mentioned that we have 38,000 customers. So one question might be, well, how many of those customers have a mixed bag? I would say everybody but 2, Jamf and this little company out in Cupertino. Everybody else has a mixed bag of devices. So that is, everybody's in the exact same boat that you're in. And what they find, though, is that Apple's deployment programs are ultimately designed for Apple. And if you embrace the uniquenesses that Apple offers, whether it be the automated enrollment, the user enrollment, the custom enrollment, the SSO extensions, the all of those, they're all Apple-only things. And what happens for those organizations that focus on all devices equally is they don't want to support anything that's unique by any of the devices, so they write a layer of middleware on it, so it works the exact same way on all devices. But it ends up changing the experience that you have on both the IT side and on the user side for the device that you're going to have. And of course, Apple's very particular about the user experience. So what Jamf does is says, let's embrace everything that's native Apple, provide the exact Apple experience, which was the reason they chose the device, but yet gives IT all the security and automation and total cost reduction that you get if you focus on Apple. And so what companies like IBM have found is even if they have Jamf and another management system for handling Apple versus Android, it's still a lower cost for them because they're able to do the Apple ones so efficiently. I'm just starting to trickle into a Jamf sales pitch, which I don't want to do, but I just have a couple more comments that I'll make, and I'll come back and we'll open it up for more. So thank you, though. I mentioned 4 reasons for Apple growth. I will just mention a 5th quickly. And the 5th is digital transformation. The 5th is organizations, like retail organizations, or we had a retailer on the line, completely changing the way their processes work, like deciding to run all their stores on iPads. That's a digital transformation. A hospital deciding to put an iPad in every patient room so that doctors could have virtual visits with them. That's a digital transformation. And not only because it's easy for the user to use, but because you can deploy the IT programs that make that very simple. That has also sparked Apple growth within the industry. So those are the reasons that I'm seeing the Apple growth, and all of the data say that it's even going more so in the future. So that brings us to today, right? And today, while it's mostly bad, there are some good things that are happening. Like, I think I've seen more digital transformation in the last 5 weeks than I've seen in the last 5 years. right? Because necessity's become the mother of invention. Everybody's got to figure out how to do stuff and do stuff quickly. And we've seen it acutely in 3 areas. Work from home has been the biggest, without a doubt. You know, things like what we've talked about, zero-touch deployments. 3 months ago, that was visionary. Now it's a necessity, right? So it shot things forward like a dart. So work from home, learning from home for schools and universities, and then, of course, telemedicine as well has been a big deal. So, you know, in the last 3 months, you know, we used to talk, as I mentioned, that zero-touch deployments was a bonus, and now organizations have to have. We used to talk about having parents be able to control their students' iPad in their house as being visionary. Now it's a requirement. We had endorsed iPads by patient bedsides so that they could entertain themselves, and now doctors require it in order to visit with the patient. So this digital transformation has just launched forward in the last 5 weeks, unlike anything that I've ever seen. And while that's important and it's exciting, what's more interesting to me from an academic perspective, we're humbled, by the way, to be a part of any of those organizations who are trying to meet those needs. But I think long-term, back to what Roger asked me to focus on, is how is this going to change us forever? How do we need to look at? And I'm going to end here with 3 sort of discussion topics, and we can go in any direction you want. 3 discussion topics that I think are kind of compelling academic discussions. The first is business continuity. So living in America, our world changed on 9/11, and your world changed as well, 9/11, 2001. What none of us ever imagined possible, a hijacked plane running into a building. None of us in our wild imagination had ever imagined it. Ever since there, that's our new reality. We know that that's possible. It's changed our lives. This pandemic is very similar. We never imagined that we would have to shut all of our doors in that 24-hour period. But now that we've had to do it, we can't go back. We can't put the genie back in the bottle. Even if we all go back to work, we now know it's possible to have to be shut down again that fast. So how does that change our business continuity plans? Think of it this way. If there was a third-party organization who decided to build a pandemic-ready certification, maybe like an ISO certification or a security certification, but build a pandemic-ready certification that would say, next pandemic, rather than the government deciding what's essential and non-essential, instead, the government is going to say, those that are pandemic-ready certified can stay open, and those that aren't must shut down. What do we need to do to be pandemic-ready certified? So that's discussion topic number 1. Discussion topic number 2 is around employee experience. For years, I was so happy to hear somebody say that they were letting employees choose. For years, Jamf actually doesn't endorse the use of Apple devices. We endorse letting employees choose what device they want to choose. And we just happen to know that employees will very frequently choose Apple. So with the changing demographics, that's happening more and more. Now, over time, we have argued, let employees choose their technology because that's part of their overall employee experience. But we now live in a world where that's their entire employee experience, right? Everything we do, what we're doing right now, we're looking through our computer screens, our communication, our productivity, our social development. Everything is through our computing experience. The computing experience is the employee experience. How does that change your mindset on what endpoint devices you're going to deploy to your end employees? So the first is business continuity. The second is employee experience and what that might mean for endpoint devices. The third topic is technology enablement, and I already touched on this. You know, Jamf was able to send everyone home in a 12-hour period because we had, and it wasn't me, it was other smarter people than me, that made very helpful technology decisions earlier. You know, we were a cloud-only serverless company. We don't have a single server in the company. We have provided employees with excellent computing devices. Obviously, being Apple, everybody's got a great iPhone. Everybody's got a great Mac. Many have iPads as well, to allow them to be productive from anywhere. And we enabled Jamf to deploy them from anywhere using zero-touch deployment. We've actually onboarded 33 employees in the last few weeks. We haven't met them yet, right? We're just shipping hardware to their home, and it's all setting up automatically through sending shrink wrap. But then the third thing we did is we had a communication strategy that was all cloud-based. So we don't have any landline phones at Jamf anywhere. All of our call centers automatically routed to all of the iPhones for all of our support personnel. So when we sent everybody home, they were able to go home the next day and they just picked up the phone and they continued to do support in the exact same way that they did at work. So the third topic that I have is what technology enablement, whether it be zero touch, no landlines, cloud only, what technology enablement needs to be done in order to be ready for what's next. So the first is about business continuity and being certified as pandemic ready. The second is about employee experience. And now that technology is their only experience, how does that change the technology you put in their hands? And then the third is more overall technology enablement. What are the areas of focus in order to be ready for the next time everybody has to go home? So that's my introduction. That's what I think about when I think about the future. I appreciate you listening. I'm going to hang out and I'll be happy to participate in the discussion with you. I'm excited to hear about what you have to say. You know, done the right way, I think our reaction to the current world circumstances can actually make us better for many years to come. And it's going to be people like you who actually do it. So thank you for that. And I'll kick it back to Roger now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dean. Those are really big topics. And I think we're all surprised actually at how successful Apple has been over the years. And just to reflect on your comment about IBM, I remember interviewing IBM some years ago when they were purely BlackBerry device users. And suddenly the CIO, there's a revolt taking place. We have to introduce iPhone or we'll die. So, and by that stage, about 50% was iPhone, 50 BlackBerry. It came really fast.
Yeah.
So
if I can make one more comment on Roger, I want to make one more comment on that, and you're exactly right. You know, the iPhone ushered in BYOD, right? It wasn't an IT initiative. It was users saying, heck no, I won't use that anymore. I'm going to use, so IT, you need to figure it out. iPhone ushered in BYOD, but this is more than a BYOD discussion. This is also what we call a CYOD discussion of letting employees choose their own device. It may be supplied by the company. So it's both BYOD and CYOD, in my view.
Absolutely. Bring your own everything, I think is the answer. Just to welcome of newcomers. So Baz, do introduce yourself, please. And you're on mute at the moment. If you could unmute yourself. If you see.
Hi, everyone. Bhupinder Baz, Baz for short. I'm an enterprise architect at DEFRA. I do a variety of different things here, from corporate services to Animal Planet Health Authority, a new ERP replacement, as well as helping support this situation and getting our 26,000 staff members working from home.
Excellent. Well, I hope we'll hear more from you shortly. Mark Gabriel, if you could just introduce yourself, please, Mark.
Okay, I'm Mark Gabriel. I'm currently working at the NHS Trust in Buckinghamshire, running IT operations. Keeps me busy.
I can well imagine, Mark. You must be a busy man. Anyone else who hasn't introduced themselves? I think everyone has. I noticed we've got quite a lot of people from the NHS here today, and I'm sure you must be extremely busy. Hugo, if you could just give us some views about A, what you've heard, and B, what are the decision points having to make right now?
Well, I resonate a lot with what's been said. We offer choice to our staff, though there are security implications that we always have to consider. I think the NHS is typically risk averse, so we tend to try to choose things that have got a good security element to them. Apple has a good record with that, so within this trust, we must have about 2,000 iOS devices that are shared around, and we use them with the junior doctors. However, this choice element is definitely there, and when people want just telephones, I've offered them Android devices as well, just in case people want to go to Android. There are people that don't actually like Apple. But we are trying to move to a more mobile way of working. We have legacy systems here which don't lend their way to that, so we know we've got to work through those challenges. So it's a slowly evolving mood, and to a degree it's driven by, I think, the general public and having their access at home and what they expect from home, they then expect in that work environment. So, smartphones were not as big as they were. 10 years ago, no one really used a smartphone. I was one of those people that was jumping onto this technology and started using the first HP smart devices. So it's interesting to watch it evolve. For us, it's a teeny bit of a headache, making sure that you're trying to keep people happy. But I think the benefit of that is happy workers tend to be working a bit better. So I'm not going to be overly prescriptive with this stuff. I'm trying to manage people and get them working. My job is to keep everybody working within this trust.
Sure, Hugh. And Richard Stewart, how are you coping in the retail business, which I guess is challenged at the moment?
Yeah, well, I mean, so full disclosure, I've left Harvey Nichols now, but I know what has been happening in the last few months, which is obviously stores being temporarily closed, etc. I think we had the same problem that everyone would have, which is a sudden switch to everyone working at home, the people that were still working, because some obviously stopped working for a while. We'd done a lot of work already putting laptops in, replacing all the laptop estate, and pushing more people having laptops, less having desktops, so that we've kind of enabled that already. We've got the VPN accounts set up, etc., etc. So I'd imagine that bit of it works quite well in terms of being ready. The bit that was one of the bits that was resonating with me was when you mentioned, Dean, about not having fixed phones, because still got fixed phones, as most companies have, sitting on people's desks. And when you think about this world and where we're going to come out of this world, you're going to have people either not in the office, or certainly not in the office 5 days a week, which kind of means that they're going to be using mobile devices anyway. So what's the advantage of having a fixed phone at all in the office going forward? And I'm trying to understand in a bit, rather than just sort of jump to, no, we don't have them. Well, what are the implications of that? Are there any problems with that? So that's certainly an area. So one of the questions that's coming up in my mind, to get very clear on the policy going forward on whether we need fixed phones in offices anymore. And are there any good reasons, and I'll open the question to anyone on the call, are there any good reasons to keep fixed phones in offices? Is an interesting question for me, so I'll stop there.
Everybody deals with that in their homes, right? People are asking more questions about, should I have a landline in my home? Those of us that are old, I don't have any at work, but I still have one in my home because I'm an old guy, and I can't imagine, not having a landline, even though I never use it. But at work, when we did that, I thought that was kind of nice in that we were being forward thinking. But in the last 2 months, I've discovered it was a lifesaver for us, because all of our call routing software, all of our cloud call routing software just went straight to the employee wherever they happen to be. And they can check themselves in and out, and it all works sort of seamlessly. So that was the thing I was most worried about, sending everybody home so quick. And by the way, I'm not selling Jamf here because we don't have call routing software. This is somebody else's software. But we used that, and as a result, we were able to just pick it right up. Yeah.
Great question, though. And as you say, Dean, I have a phone in my home. None of my kids have phones in their homes. You wouldn't understand why you need one. It just wouldn't cross their minds. It's a different generational thing.
So, Roger, just maybe if I question to the group, does anyone see any reasons for keeping phones in offices?
Yeah, good question. Anyone want to respond to that?
Question.
I think the answer is no.
We had that issue on our customer services desks, and they didn't want to tie up screens with. So we switched about 18 months ago to voice over IP, and we could have had apps on mobile phones, which we do for certain users that are maybe more mobile than others on the road, regional managers, etc., etc. But the customer services team, or customer happiness team as they're called, wanted to have physical phones on desks. So we had the numbers ported, etc. So we actually put physical VoIP phones on desks. They didn't want their screens tied up because they wanted to have the help desk, the customer management systems on their screens, and they didn't want them tied up with the call software, the phone software. They didn't want it on their screens. But they actually were able to plug out their phones with a laptop and bring the phone home, and then plug it in through the VPN connection back in and actually use the physical phone at home. But they had again, through choice, they wanted the choice of actually having the phone. And we do have a couple of emergency phones around our buildings and our warehouses and distribution and manufacturing that need physical handsets and need lines to them for health and safety.
Sure. Just actually looking at the clock, we promised to have breakout groups, and we are actually currently able to now arrange those two groups, one under Dean, and I guess if I may, the other one I think is under Kieran. So we will automatically switch you through to the breakout groups. So look forward to seeing you in the breakout groups, but then later on we'll have a resumption of the plenary so that we can actually share conclusions. Thank you.
For the last 15 years, I've been on a quest to discover the DNA of the most successful digital leaders in the world. What makes them tick, what's in their minds and in their hearts. We are sharing deep insights from our world-class CIOs so that you get inspired, can learn and reach your full potential as a digital leader. If you are an ambitious technology executive, then I invite you to join CIONET. Join our community so that you too can realize your ambition.